Science has a specific relationship with the word unexplained. It does not mean no one has tried to explain it. It means that multiple research teams, with access to modern equipment, with peer-reviewed studies behind them, have looked at a specific animal behavior and arrived at the same conclusion. We know what is happening. We can describe it precisely. We can document it repeatedly. And we cannot tell you why. That distinction matters. Every entry on this list is a documented, verified, reproducible behavior. The animals are doing something real. The mystery is not whether it is happening. The mystery is what the biological purpose is, why evolution produced it, or in some cases, how the animal is physically capable of doing it at all. These are 7 animals doing things that the scientific community, as of the current state of published research, cannot fully explain. Number 1. Ravens holding trials. In 1984, ornithologist Bernd Heinrich was studying raven behavior in the forests of Maine when he observed something he spent the next several years trying to find an alternative explanation for. Ravens were gathering, not around a food source, not in a mating display context, in large groups, sometimes dozens of individuals, in what appeared to be a structured social event centered on a specific individual. The assembled birds would call loudly, circle the target individual, and in some observed instances, the surrounded bird would be attacked by the group before the assembly dispersed. Heinrich eventually published his observations under the term raven courts, gatherings that appeared to function as something resembling a judgment or trial directed at a specific raven who had, in some way that the other birds appeared to have collectively assessed, violated a social norm. What makes this genuinely unexplained is not the observation itself. Multiple researchers have since documented similar assemblies across raven populations in North America and Europe. But what the gatherings are actually for. Ravens are among the most cognitively sophisticated non-human animals ever studied. They plan for the future, use tools, deceive each other strategically, and maintain long-term individual relationships. The court behavior is consistent with a species capable of social rule enforcement. But whether that is what is actually happening, whether the ravens are collectively assessing a transgression and responding to it, is a question researchers have not been able to answer with the kind of causal certainty that would move it from fascinating observation to understood phenomenon. The ravens keep holding court. Scientists keep watching. No consensus has been reached. Number 2. Sperm whales. Sleeping vertically. In 2008, a research team off the coast of Chile encountered something that had never been directly observed before in any large whale species. A pod of sperm whales was floating at the surface, completely motionless, in a vertical position, heads up, bodies hanging downward, apparently deeply asleep. The researchers drifted a boat directly into the middle of the group before any whale responded. One whale was nudged by the boat's hull and still did not immediately surface to breathe. This vertical, apparently unconscious sleep state, subsequently documented across multiple sperm whale populations, raises a question that marine biologists still cannot fully resolve. Sperm whales are air-breathing mammals that must surface to breathe approximately every 90 minutes. Unlike dolphins, which are known to engage in unihemispheric sleep, resting one brain hemisphere at a time while the other remains alert. The complete vertical posture and total immobility of sleeping sperm whales suggests a different mechanism. What perplexes scientists is how these massive air-breathing mammals manage this sleep state without drowning, especially considering they typically need to surface every 90 minutes to breathe. The vertically sleeping whale is also completely vulnerable. It cannot detect approaching predators. It cannot move quickly if a killer whale, the only animal that seriously threatens adult sperm whales, approaches. The sleep state appears, from a survival standpoint, to be extraordinarily dangerous. Why sperm whales sleep this way rather than in a posture that maintains any level of alertness, how they regulate their breathing during the sleep state, and what evolutionary pressure produced this specific behavior in this specific species, all remain genuinely unresolved in the published literature. Number 3. Migratory birds navigating using quantum mechanics. Here is the most scientifically significant unexplained animal behavior on this list, and the one where the explanation, if confirmed, would require rewriting the boundary between quantum physics and biology. Migratory birds navigate across continents with a precision that cannot be fully explained by any of the mechanisms scientists have been able to confirm. They appear to use the Earth's magnetic field as a compass. This much is established. What is not established, and what has become one of the most actively debated questions in biophysics over the past 2 decades, is the mechanism by which they sense that field. The leading hypothesis, supported by a substantial body of experimental evidence but not yet definitively proven, is cryptochrome-based quantum entanglement. Specifically, light entering the bird's eye triggers a chemical reaction in a protein called cryptochrome that produces pairs of electrons in a quantum-entangled state, a state where the electron's properties are correlated in a way that can only be explained by quantum mechanics. The orientation of the Earth's magnetic field subtly influences this quantum state, and the bird reads that influence as directional information. If this is confirmed, and researchers at institutions including the University of Oldenburg and Oxford have produced evidence consistent with it, it would mean that a biological organism is using quantum mechanical processes in a real-time, functional, evolutionarily selected way to navigate. It would mean that evolution discovered quantum mechanics independently, millions of years before any human physicist did, and built it into the eye of a small bird. The behavior is documented. The hypothesis is being tested. The mechanism is not yet confirmed. And researchers working on it describe the implications if the hypothesis holds as among the most significant findings in the history of biology. Number 4. Elephants mourning strangers. Elephant mourning behavior has been documented and studied for decades. The standing vigils, the touching of bones, the returns to sites associated with deceased herd members. This behavior is real, well documented, and widely reported. What is significantly less understood, and what sits in a genuinely unresolved category, is the behavior elephants display toward the remains of elephants they have never met. In controlled field experiments, researchers have presented elephants with the bones and skulls of elephants from other populations, individuals the test subjects could not have encountered during their lifetime. The elephants approached and interacted with these stranger remains in ways that closely resembled the mourning behavior observed toward the bones of known herd members. Extended investigation with the trunk, nudging and repositioning the bones, returning to the site repeatedly. The same experiments, using bones and skulls from other large animals, buffalo, rhino, presented to the same elephants produced significantly less of this focused investigative behavior. This raises a question that current elephant cognition research cannot cleanly answer. How do elephants recognize the remains of other elephants as categorically different from the remains of other large animals? And what does that recognition involve? Is it olfactory? Is it shape-based? Does the recognition produce something that functions as a psychological response to the death of a member of their broader species, rather than just a known individual? The behavior has been replicated. The question of what is generating it remains genuinely open. Number 5. The octopus dreaming in color. In 2019, marine biologist David Scheel filmed his pet octopus, Heidi, while she slept. The footage showed something that, when it was broadcast in a PBS documentary, produced more scientific discussion than almost any piece of wildlife footage that year. While apparently asleep, Heidi cycled through rapid, complex color and texture changes across her entire skin, the same kind of dynamic chromatophore activity that an octopus produces while hunting, camouflaging, or communicating while awake. The changes moved across her body in waves, produced recognizable patterns, and lasted for several minutes before subsiding. David Scheel's on-camera interpretation was that she was dreaming, possibly replaying a hunt or a camouflage sequence experienced while awake. The scientific community's response was more carefully worded and more honest about what the footage actually demonstrates. Octopuses do display sleep states, periods of reduced activity consistent with sleep in other animals. The chromatophore activity during those states is real and documented. Whether it constitutes dreaming in any sense that involves subjective experience, whether there is something it is like to be a sleeping octopus cycling through color patterns, is a question that neuroscience cannot currently answer for any animal, including humans. What is specifically unexplained about the octopus case is why the chromatophore system, which requires active neural control, is activating at all during sleep, and what that activation is for. In waking octopuses, every color change has a functional purpose: camouflage, communication, threat display, hunting. In sleeping octopuses, those functions are absent. Something is driving the system. What that something is, and whether it involves anything resembling the mental replay that constitutes dreaming in mammals, remains an active research question with no settled answer. Number 6. Whale mass strandings. Few sights are as heartbreaking as dozens of whales washed ashore, alive but unable to return to the sea. Sometimes hundreds have stranded together with no obvious signs of injury or illness. Mass strandings, events in which multiple whales or dolphins beach themselves simultaneously, often across miles of coastline, have been documented for centuries and studied intensively for decades. They remain, in the specific cases that do not fit known explanations, genuinely unexplained. Some strandings have identifiable causes: naval sonar disorientation, disease in a socially bonded group where healthy individuals follow a sick leader toward shore, unusual bathymetry that confuses magnetic navigation. These cases are understood, or at least partially understood. The cases that are not understood are the ones where none of those explanations apply. Healthy animals, no sonar activity in the area. Socially cohesive species like pilot whales, but with no evidence of a sick individual leading the group. Animals that are guided back to deep water by responders and immediately return to shore voluntarily, sometimes repeatedly, before dying. Some biologists think it has to do with the Earth's magnetic fields, which whales may use to navigate across oceans. A disruption caused by solar storms or unusual geology might lead whales astray. But this hypothesis does not explain why rescued, reoriented animals return to the beach rather than correcting course once they are in open water. The behavior in the most inexplicable strandings looks, from every observable angle, like an animal that has decided to beach itself. What is producing that decision? What, neurologically or physiologically, is driving a healthy animal toward a shore it cannot survive on? Is a question that every major hypothesis has so far failed to answer completely. Number 7. The electric eel's remote control. The electric eel was understood for a long time as a straightforward biological weapon. It generates high-voltage electric discharges to stun prey and deter predators. The mechanism was known. The physics was clear. The behavior was considered explained. Then, Vanderbilt University biologist Kenneth Catania ran a series of experiments that revealed something nobody had anticipated, and that opened a question the field is still working through. When an electric eel detects prey hidden in vegetation or buried under sediment, prey it cannot see or directly contact, it does not simply discharge and hope for impact. It emits a specific pattern of rapid, precisely timed pulses that Catania's research found were not simply stunning the prey. They were remotely activating the prey's own motor neurons, hijacking the animal's nervous system and causing it to involuntarily contract its muscles and move, revealing its location to the eel. Beyond simply stunning prey, electric eels can emit rapid-fire pulses that appear to manipulate multiple organisms simultaneously. Recent studies suggest they may generate synchronized fields that disrupt nervous systems across a small area. The specific question that remains unresolved is not whether this is happening. Catania's experimental evidence is robust and has been replicated, but how the eel learned to do it, and whether it is doing it intentionally in any meaningful sense. The pulse pattern that hijacks prey motor neurons is specific, timed, and different from the pulse pattern used for simple stunning. The eel appears to be selecting a different tool for a different purpose. Whether that selection involves anything resembling a cognitive decision, whether the eel understands, in any functional sense, that a specific kind of pulse produces a specific kind of prey response, or whether it is a fixed pattern triggered by sensory input without any internal model of what it is doing, is a question that goes to the heart of what cognition means in an animal with a fundamentally different nervous system architecture than any vertebrate researchers have studied before. The eel keeps using its remote control. The question of whether it knows it has one remains open. Here is the thread that connects these 7 animals, and it matters more than it might seem at first. Every one of these behaviors is real. Every one of them has been studied by serious researchers with serious equipment, in peer-reviewed contexts, producing peer-reviewed papers. The mystery in each case is not whether the behavior exists. It is what the behavior means, what biological process is generating it, what evolutionary purpose produced it, and in some cases, whether the concepts we use to explain animal behavior at all are adequate to what these animals are doing. Ravens may be enforcing social rules. Sperm whales may be sleeping in a way that requires a physiological mechanism we have not yet identified. Migratory birds may be running quantum calculations in their own eyes. Elephants may be responding to the death of strangers with something that functions as species-level grief. Octopuses may be dreaming. Whales may be choosing to die for reasons we cannot access. Electric eels may be making strategic decisions with a weapon most animals do not have. Maybe. The honest answer, in every case, is we don't know yet. And that may be the most important thing science says.